Welcome to the Lot1 Podcast. I'm your host, Deji Boncolate.
And I'm Christopher Henley.
Today we are talking to Yoko Okumura, who is a fantastic director who made a movie called Unseen, which is really good. And today we're talking about working with Blumhouse, finding a creative style, and the business side of movie making. So let's get into the show. And so I did that in... well, also because I wanted to try chlorophyll out, but, for this interview.
I love it. Drinking chlorophyll straight, though, that's pretty hardcore.
Well, there's a little bit of peppermint in it, so it makes it feel like, I mean, it's also in water diluted, so maybe that's...
Gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, if it was straight chlorophyll, I mean, that would be like...
It looks pretty hardcore, even if it's diluted.
Yeah. Okay. So, welcome to the show, Yoko. Thank you so much for being here. For the people who, the growing smaller number of people who are still don't know who you are yet, can you give us a little bit of like a bio, like you?
Yeah, of course. Thanks so much for having me. I am a director and a writer. I was born in Japan, grew up in Minneapolis, Minnesota, but have been in Los Angeles for a very long time since I started film school there. And I've been working in television and feature films for the last, several years. But I also have a background in, I used to produce, I used to, shoot, I used to be a second AC, I used to be an editor, I used to do, like literally every single role. So I have a long history in film in all kinds of roles before I got to be where I am today as a director and writer.
That's awesome. So sounds like you have had a lot of different types of roles. So what made you sort of land on being a writer director, or did you already know that when you first started?
I think the desire to be a writer director was always lingering inside of me, but almost like having the confidence to say it out loud and claim it and really pursue it took a while. I went to undergrad at CalArts for film school, but even before that, I went to media arts high school in Minnesota. So I always had a camera in my hand and it was always what I loved to do. But as far as saying out loud and really committing to being a director and being paid for it as my career, that took a lot of years of feeling like, oh, who am I to say that? Like everybody wants to be a director. Who am I to say that? So it took a long time to own the desire, but the desire was always there.
Yeah, I 100% can relate to that. Being in a lot of different roles myself before I decided I want to do this. What do you feel like it takes to make that decision? Like what was the catalyst for you to be like, F this, I'm gonna go after it?
For me, it was very slow. Again, it's almost like baby steps, right? Like one thing led to the other as I pursued what I liked doing and then, tried some things, but then said no to them eventually when I realized I didn't like it as much. So again, starting from living in Minneapolis, right? Like no connection to the film industry as just a young girl. The next step was, what am I going to do for college? And then I get to LA to go to CalArts, right? And then from there, it's like, oh, what can I do to make money? So I try being an AC, and then from there, it's like, oh, I've graduated. Oh my God, like, what am I going to do with my life? So, I work at Sugarfish and I'm trying to be an AC and I barely keep making any money. And I actually kind of get sick. Like, you go through these moments. And then I think even at that moment, if I had have declared I want to be a director, I wouldn't have known what to do with it. But again, even from there, I was like, okay, I'm going to get an internship and I'm going to work at a documentary company. And then from there, it was like, oh, next little step might be I might apply to grad school because I hear AFI is like the one film grad school that's really worth the money. And so I applied to that. It was really all these tiny little ones. What's the next step? And then finally, even once I got into AFI, I hadn't really committed like that or even really acknowledged consciously like this could actually be a paid lucrative creative career for me.
Yeah.
I was already in AFI being a director before it really hit me that maybe this could actually happen for me. So it was like a 10-year slow burn process for me, of taking steps even if my mind hadn't made it up yet.
That's
That's
good.
this whole industry.
Yeah.
That's really like it's crazy to hear. Well, not crazy, but it's reaffirming to hear someone who's there doing it, of how, like, you started off, a scene and stuff like that, because I feel like so many people think it's just like a direct path to it, and it's like,
Yeah.
I'm directing and I have to direct everything and blah blah blah, but it's like, no, like, even me, like, producing so many things within Lot 1 and stuff like that, it's like you have to just wear 100 hats because you have to, and then
Hmm.
hopefully one day, because I'm the same way, like, I want to direct, but I get to direct like maybe like one thing every 1 to 2 years, and it's like, you know can I get there eventually? Maybe, but if, as long as I surround myself with everything, you know and I'm filmmaking, that's all that matters.
Yeah, and the great thing about filmmaking is that even if you're not a director, eventually as a director, you need to know a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
So if you're practicing being, even if you're shooting a wedding or you're editing a music video, that's all skills that will actually come in
Yeah.
to it. It'll inform you as a director and make you a more well-rounded director.
Mm.
As you know, I think there's some people, the rare gems of people are like, oh, I just made a feature on my own and it went to Sundance and then I
Yeah.
got to do this and then all I've done is directing. There are those rare people, but I think that is just so much less normal. Those are the like shooting stars you hear about and everybody compares themselves to, but
Mm.
truly I think the average director did not get to the job of directing in that kind of superstar
Yeah.
shoot to the top way where they only ever direct. Most people putz their way around the industry and
Mm.
eventually, with longevity and a marathon mentality, they got to directing.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I don't love the idea that's what it requires, but I love the idea that you said that because I've I think that that's extremely true. At what point did you start to figure out what your style was and like the style of directing? Because you have a fairly unique style of directing.
Yeah, it took a long time to figure out who I was and what I really wanted to say and how I wanted to say it. Again, that I went through lots of film school, right? I went to 4 years of undergrad BFA film video. I went to 2 years of AFI, and I think by the time I had graduated AFI, by the time I had made my thesis film at AFI, I had made like 5, 6 short films.
Mm.
Um, and but I don't think it wasn't until my thesis where I finally felt like, oh, this is me. This is where everything comes together and represents me holistically. These are the kind of, Kimi Kabuki was my thesis film, and it was about a
Mm.
housewife that follows her husband to a porn convention and like learns about intimacy. And I was
Mm.
like, oh, but it has like it's earnest and but it's funny and but it's a little sad, but it's a little bit kinky, like but it's talking about relationships and talking about sex, but it's also talking about um what's funny, sometimes make movies about sex that have no sex in it. It's like the purest way to talk about that topic. But yeah, I, I in that film, which is probably like my seventh short film that I had made, I finally everything started to actually congeal who I
Mm.
am, what I wanted to say, the kinds of characters that mattered to me.
Mm.
And on top of that, me elevating, what we made an adult, porn convention at a Glendale Hilton, right? So we
Oh,
filled
nice.
that up. But I specifically was like, you know what? Let's make it even more colorful and a little more magical than an actual convention would look. So let's make it
Mm.
all pink. Let's make it a little sparkly. So that film was when I first got a glimpse at who I was, as a filmmaker, what my style was. It took a long time though, and it took a long time to not only actually make a film that represented me, but then to be able to articulate what that is.
Mm.
Took me more years. Like now I can articulate that I am a director that loves to tell stories about rebellious characters, and I want to deconstruct things like, you know, gender roles and beauty standards and sexuality. But I want to do that in large colorful worlds, and I love
Mm.
stories that, you know, combine grit and glamour. So, you know, that one sentence took me years and so many after years and years of making
Yeah.
mistakes and
Yeah.
practicing movie making, I can finally articulate that, but that took a long time.
Did it like? Did you realize it in the moment, or was it like after you finish and you went, "Oh," or like when you were in it, were you like, "Yes"?
I don't think I knew it in the moment. No, I don't think I knew. I could feel there was a lot of joy and a lot of excitement that I was like, oh, yeah, like this, you know, walking into that on set of that, you know, pink filled porn convention in the at the Hilton. I was like, oh my, I was so excited and so happy. So I knew I was doing something right. But no, only kind of in retrospect am I like, oh, that's when I kind of had arrived. Yeah.
That's really awesome. I love that. Yeah, that's where I want to go. I want to get to the point where I can like succinctly say that out. Is
How do you
there
guys feel right now though about like, if you had to explain what you want to do and who you are, would you be what would like, do genres come up in your head or styles?
yeah, for me, you know, I would say um sci-fi comes up for me for sure. I always like anytime I'm thinking about an idea, I'm always thinking about, well, what's the twist? You know, like I'm always, it's like one of the first things I think about. Um so yeah, there's a little bit of there's like nuggets in there, but I think that by doing more shorts that are like where I'm pushing that idea out, you know, I'm looking for those ideas, will I be able to like kind of suss out like like what actually in that did I love the most in each of them. And that actually kind of like brings me to like you, like do you feel like each of the projects that you did, you learned something new about yourself in?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, again, I look at all of my short films, whether they're documentaries or a scripted narrative, and then I get to, you know, my TV shows that I've been able to be a part of directing, and then I look at my feature, and you know, every single one of them had something to teach me. But and it's not just that they each had something to teach me, they each had something I walked into them like hoping to learn or hoping to challenge or hoping to try. So even with TV shows, you know, it's like I look for a particular scene or a particular element that I've never worked with before
Mm,
that is exciting, that I could again continue to expand my toolkit of directing with. Um, but you know, but yeah, but especially with projects that are my own, where I'm writing and directing them. You know, after Kimi Kabuki, that one, you know, what Kimi Kabuki had was the story and the characters and the production design that felt like very me. But there
mm,
was, but I actually wanted to push the envelope with the camera a little bit more, because I had
mm,
chosen like a 4x3, very Andrea Arnold fish tank way to shoot Kimi Kabuki, which was like an interesting take for that, you know, kind of light drama story. I think that was just a specific era I was in. But
mm,
I, you know, I was like, no, I didn't quite push. The camera was very passive participant. I mean, it was in that movie, whereas like I just wanted to really stylize it. Like I love movies like, you know, Old Boy, and I love Edgar Wright, and I'm like, I want to make the
mm,
next short I make, I want to push myself with the camera as well, and show what I want to do, because that's Kimmy didn't quite show the camera stuff I wanted to
mm,
do. So then I wrote a punk rock musical, and I was like, I want to do music, I want to do this, and I want to do that. So it's still Lexical Gap was that short that I made, and Lexical Gap
mm,
still had the characters and the elevated production design that I had in Kimmy, but I also pushed the camera work and like wanted to do a lot of stylized, almost surreal match cuts, and have it be more frenetic and have it, just push the style end a little bit more. So
Yeah.
every short that I decided to do for myself, I always had like a new homework assignment for me to be like, this time I want to showcase this part of myself.
Yeah. I 100% see all of what you're talking about in Unseen. Like I
Oh
was like,
yeah.
as I was watching it, I was like, well, this is pretty cool. Like it's
Yeah.
like there's like so many like cool camera movements and the match cuts and like even the split screen where they're like walking along. I was like, that's pretty sick. So
Thank you.
yeah, there's a lot of really cool stuff in that. What inspires you as a creative?
What inspires me? I mean, all kinds of things inspire me from in all kinds of ways. But as far as what inspires me as a writer director is well, what inspires me to like initiate a project or a creative project that I really want to see in the world and what I really want to shepherd into the world is just these moments of just personal moments like anybody else might have of like, man, this bothers me, or like I hate this, or like, oh, I love this, like something I feel really intense about. And
Mm.
then like I'm like, oh, is there a story around that? Or like, oh, you know so those moments I try to write down to make sure that maybe it's a nugget that I can expand on. But all kinds of things inspire me. I love podcasts. I love art, and I love uh visual art. I love photography, like like all kinds of things. I think that we all kind of look at and are like, oh, I could take a little bit of that, I could take a little bit of this, and like make it into my
Mm.
own sauce.
The Lot1 Podcast is brought to you by the Tourist Hat Coffee Company. You know what keeps me running on those long film sets, Stagey?
What's that, Chris?
Coffee. And you know what's the worst thing ever?
A swift kick in the pants.
No, bad coffee. So that's why I choose Tourist Hat Coffee Company's high quality coffee beans. Their artisan roasted single origin coffee and handcrafted blends are so much better than those stale stuff you get from those other brands.
Yeah, those things are bad.
Tourist Hat Coffee Company's coffee is artisan roasted, micro roasted, single origin, and their small batch roaster that handcrafts their blends to maximize peak freshness upon delivery. Family owned and operated. What more could you ask for from a coffee company, Deji?
I literally can't think of anything else.
If you're still not sold, a portion of each purchase goes towards contributing to some of their favorite nonprofit organizations, such as Animation Dance Community, Seeds of Hope International, and Beautiful Gate Orphanage.
These guys are good.
Make Tourist Hat Coffee Company your new go-to quality coffee choice with our exclusive offer for you, the Lot1 Podcast listener.
Oh, listen up, guys.
First-time customers can use the code LOT1BOGO at checkout to receive one free bag of coffee when you buy two. That's right, Deji, buy two, get one free.
Whoa.
So head on over to touristhatcoffeecompany.com and use promo code LOT1BOGO at checkout. Again, that is LOT1 BOGO at checkout. Whether you work in the film industry or not and want a delicious cup of coffee, this is the perfect time to stock up on your favorite blends of coffee or try something new. I know I'll be brewing Tourist Hat on my sets moving forward, Deji. Again, that's promo code LOT1 BOGO, LOT1 BOGO at checkout to claim your buy two, get one free. Terms and conditions apply. Tourist Hat, coffee that fuels your adventure. It sounds like, because you asked the question of like, oh, have you guys found your style or whatever, and then you brought up like, Deji brought up what inspires you to make things because it really made me think, because I've never really truly asked myself that, because I haven't done enough directing projects where like I feel like I have that like answer for you. But to me it really sounds like you're just pushing yourself to try things that you haven't done before, very like, but then also very like grounded, like, oh, I had this experience, so I want to play with that and throw it into a film or throw it into a short film or whatever. It's like, for me, when I think what inspires me is like, I just like epic stuff. I want to make epics, because there's not a lot of those that exist anymore. And I have all these like nuggets in my brains, but it's not like moments, it's like visuals from other filmmakers, or if I'm out and it's a sunset, and just seeing like how the light affects the people I'm around inspires me to like, I don't want to make a film based off that moment. I want to make a film based off of like the visual I just occurred. So I'll create an entire short film or an idea around like a single shot. And it's just like, I just want to make that cool shot. I don't care the story that it revolves around it. I just want to incorporate that shot into whatever I'm making, you know? So it's really cool to hear you like say like nuggets for you, moments in your life that you just want to push or re-experience or play with is really cool to me.
Yeah, and I think the more you kind of just kind of pursue your bliss or pursue your, what excites you, the more you're going to start to build a larger picture of who you are as a filmmaker. Because you might start with these images of these lights or these locations, or and you want to make epics, right? And then it's like, but like and then you'll start to, if you start kind of pursuing also like, so that's the world, right? That's the feeling,
Sure.
and that's the look. So then it's like next it's like what do you pursue, what is a magnet for you when it comes to like, well, what feelings do you love when you watch the epics, right? What is it about the epics that make you lean in so much, and like what is it in you that needs that, or like makes you feel something in that? Because I think the filmmakers we all love tend to have a style within themselves where that they can, and like an umbrella of topics they love to talk about, that they can actually put into any genre. And I love that, where it's like, I do think I have an umbrella of the kinds of topics that I love to talk about and the kinds of characters I like to talk about. But I don't know. I'm always excited to be like, what's Yoko's version of a action film, right? Like, what's
Yeah.
Yoko's sign? Like, and I feel like at this point I can actually answer that. I think that's where the fun lies. Is the more you get to know yourself, the more you get to kind of play in a sandbox and kind of start to make up your own genre.
Sure. Yeah.
That's awesome. I heard something about Christopher Nolan talking about, like, I think it was uh, either Tenet or something like that, and he was like, "This is like my version of a spy movie," and I was like, "That's interesting," and it seems like once you have figured that out for yourself, who you are, the type of style you have, then you can just put your style on top of something else, or like you run a scenario through your style, and then it's like, okay, well, on the other end, this is what comes out. you know um that's really cool. I love that. That's awesome. So I do have a question. So what do you feel like it takes to become a successful writer director?
What it takes is a lot of patience and again, long haul marathon mentality, that you are just in it. Yeah, you're in it for the long haul, and this is what you do, and that whether you're literally directing right now doesn't take away the fact you are a director. You see everything you do, whatever, even if it's a side job at a restaurant that makes you money, you see that as an important component to your directing career. That is what's making the money, and that's allowing you to have time on the weekends to write or go shoot something with your friends. So that's just the finance department of your production company at the moment.
Nice.
But that
Nice.
you don't have to look down on it as, as, oh, if I'm working here it means I'm not a director. It means, no, it's like, right now this is what's necessary for me to be a director.
Mm.
And yeah, I think you just do have to have that sense of tenacity. But again, patience, because I don't think I would ever say that, I think hustle culture is something we're all kind of starting to deconstruct and understand that maybe there's some toxic aspects of that. And of course you
Mm.
have to hustle in the sense of like, you want to always be working on a new project, you want to always be meeting new people. So that's what we kind of used to call hustle, that is still necessary. But
Mhm.
I think what's also necessary is, because you're in it for the long haul and you need to cultivate longevity, you can't constantly hustle or you'll break
Mm.
down.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
do need rest, and you do need to treat yourself like a human being, or else, so I had a health crisis in my early 20s where like I've always had eczema my whole life, but like
Hmm.
the stress just really just amped up the cortisol in my body, and I just like my whole body was covered in eczema. It was just very bad for like 6 months. I was like, is my life over? Like I
Wow.
couldn't get out of
Wow.
bed, like.
Jeez.
So I learned the hard way that you can only hustle so hard
Yeah.
until your body tells you that this is not actually going to be a path you
That's,
can keep going on. And
yeah.
for me it was my skin, but for other people it might be their stomach, or they're just there's it manifests in different ways. But so to sum it up, it's like, yeah, you have to keep working, you have to be in it for the long haul, you have to be patient, but you also have to like take time, moments of rest. You can rest
Mm.
without quitting.
Yeah. Love that. I've got like this thing that I've been doing recently. We'll talk about it on the after show, but I totally understand the understanding that balance and like working on yourself as a human, as well as like your craft, and and if those both of those things are happening simultaneously, then you can go further, as opposed to just working on one or the other.
Yeah, especially because I mean we are lucky that our what we want to do is about the human experience, and you can't actually make, even if you're making the biggest popcorn movies that you might think, it's not the art house films, like it's still about the human experience. It can still be
Yeah.
about fear and joy, and so all those things, the more you know yourself and the more you're building your own emotional intelligence, it's literally applicable to your job.
Yeah.
Whereas there may be certain art forms where that's not literally going to translate into the work, but this is the work of directing and storytelling,
Mm.
is understanding and the complexities of being a human being. So absolutely, I think it's pretty crucial, more than any other art form.
Yeah. So what are some of the steps that you should take in order to get started? Like, whether that's, trying to secure an agent, or doing your first short film, or like, what are all those things like, if it's day one, you know, in your being a director, what's the first thing you do?
I think day one in being a director is to write a short film and direct it with a no budget, just on your own with your friends, or colleagues, or just people you find at your school or your work, and just do it for no money and don't expect it to go into a big festival. Just practice directing and make sure you actually like directing, because I think something with filmmaking is that you can really get into your head about how much you want to make these beautiful films, these big feature films that have affected you so much, and forget that it is a job, and there are
Hmm.
hard things about the job that you have to face and really decide if it's for you or not. Like before you invest thousands of dollars in a film school, or before you invest thousands of dollars into a feature film, like you should probably see if you even like it, if you even like being a leader on set, telling what people what to do, and if you want to have everything on your shoulders, and if you even like talking to actors and crafting a performance. Like I do hear a lot of people who are now DPs, or who are now costume designers or production designers, that they some of them may have tried directing and actually decided they don't like it. It's not for
Mm.
them. They
Yeah.
still love film, but there was actually other places they thrived more and was better for their personalities. So if you're really starting out, day one as pursuing directing, try it, see if you even
Hmm.
like it.
Okay. Because if you
Try
don't
it
like it, it's not
first. Yeah.
not worth going on the
Because it's such a hard
years long
road.
journey. Yeah. Got it.
It's such a hard road, and it's one of those jobs where sometimes you're like, wait, this is the job? I didn't even know, like, so the more you know before you're really committing all of your energy to the path, the better.
Yeah. What are some of the
Yeah.
things that you know about directing now that you didn't know before, but that were like surprising to you when you found out?
What a physically laborious, intense job it is. I knew, I know about the the night shoots and the long hours and but I didn't realize. I mean, I think as you get older and you've done it more, you maybe your body gets used to it, but I don't know. For me, even the short films maybe weren't quite there, but like when I did my first TV show, and I did a decent job at it, but every day afterwards, I go home and be like, oh my god, like my body would just be like, I felt like my body was just melting, and like I just, I have like a massage budget for myself after, like for every episode of TV I do. I'm like, I
Yeah,
need,
I love it.
I need, this is something I know I need. And maybe this isn't like, maybe this is not the case for everybody else. Maybe I just hold stress and intensity in my body more than other people. But even doing my short films and stuff, the stakes were just so much lower when
Yeah.
you're really hired to provide a service to somebody else, and you really want to do a good job, and you really want, you hope that the showrunners will like it, and all the actors are having a good time, and everything's going well, and when you're running against the clock and it's somebody else's money, that's like it was really hard on my body to have that much responsibility, and
Yeah.
my mind could absolutely handle it, my skills could absolutely handle it, but after every episode I'd be like, what did my body just go through? It just yeah, so that's probably the one thing where it's like, if you like to be physically comfortable, maybe directing is not for you.
It's
Or if
funny
you
you bring
like
that up because
decathlons.
yeah, I always make the joke with the Lot 1 boys, as we call them, the other partners in the company, that like we like our if we ever have a healthcare plan, it should just have massage attached to it. I'm gonna have that written into my contract, because like not at your level for sure, because I haven't been there before, but my senior thesis for my college, we did crowdfunding to pay for the budget or whatever. And I remember you bring up the like feeling just so exhausted after every day. That's how I felt, because I was like, oh my god, I got to deliver, because some people I know, some people I don't know gave me the money to do this. So it was like this like added level of pressure where I was just like, the whole time. And I just remember that so vividly, of just how exhausted I was. And I'd wake up the next day and be like, okay, we can do this, and then just go.
Yeah, it's like climbing a mountain every day over and over again. And again, I think if that's you can adapt to it, but there's it's a lifestyle that is very very unique, that I again even when I was wanting to be a director, applying to AFI, I don't think I knew how intense it was going to be physically
Mm,
when I was a professional. And and I've also had gigs where I'm a writer and I'm doing rewrites and I'm getting paid for it. I'm like, wow, I'm at home in my PJs, I'm comfortable. I have to meet a deadline, and that's mentally stressful, but my body is so much, it's at home. It gets up when
yeah.
it wants to, it goes to sleep when it wants to. It's just such a different lifestyle. And I think it's worth considering when you're trying to figure out what you want to do.
What do you feel like? I'm sure at this point you've got this down, but what is your sort of process? So when you do get a job like the TV shows or the movie, what is your process for directing? I mean, do you talk to the actors first? Do you like what is your creative process?
It totally depends on the project. And not even like whether it's a movie or a TV show, like the specific TV show might dictate a different process. I think as a director, first and foremost, your job is to be, have strength in your convictions, but also incredibly adaptable. And so specifically, especially with television, like, you know, whether you're going to have time to do the kind of prep I would typically like to do is not always up to me. And like the schedule might be different. The kind of prep they do and the culture of this particular show might be different. The DP might not be available, you know? So you just have to be adaptable in what that process is. So, but if I'm completely in control in the sense of like, okay, it's my film. So let's say Unseen was my feature film, and you know, it's not like I was able to do everything I wanted to do, because there was a set, you know, amount of prep days and there's a set amount of, you know, time every single day. But I always, again, you start with the script, of course, and I just read it like I would read any form of entertainment, and just read it like I am the viewer, and like write, you know, just kind of highlight like, oh, I love this part, or oh, this part surprised me, or like, oh, this part. So I'm just like jotting down notes and you know, just seeing it as a viewer. And then I'll go through it again and start to write down like images that I have, you know, in my head from seeing it and stuff. But again, specifically for Unseen though, there was also a notes process where I came in as a director and was like, okay, this is what I want to change about the script, this is what I want to add to it, this is the kind of adjustments I want to make to it. And I kind of pitched that to the executives, and then did a director's pass of the script that was written already by these two writers. So, you know, I guess before I even break it down for a shot list or talk to any actors, I am, especially because for me, I'm very much a camera driven director. I'm writing in my director's draft. I'm writing in a lot of things, like, you know, in Unseen, the feet walking across the screen in a split screen with two different characters. I wrote that in, right, so that everybody knows what kind of style that we're all going for. I wrote in pretty much all the split screens that previous didn't exist in the movie into the script. So I guess if it's a movie and there's already a script that exists, I'm coming in and rewriting it to infuse some of my style and my voice into it. That's probably one of the first things I'm doing. Obviously, if I had written it, that's already in there. And if it's a TV show, I'm not doing that, because you don't do a director's pass in a TV show. So let's say that the script feels ready, whether I had my hands on it or not. Then yeah, I would start. Again, I start, you know, by highlighting the scenes that are kind of the emotional linchpins, right? The scenes that need something a little special, the scenes that you know, feel like you've seen them before, but maybe you could put a special spin on it. Yeah, and then, you know, again, with both TV and film, you start to kind of conceptualize what you want, but then the reality of the actual locations and what's available start to dictate what's going to be possible, right? So through the whole prep process, it's kind of constantly evolving, and you're problem solving. So my initial ideas that I had when I was just daydreaming with the script will evolve, and yeah, but some things will stay the same, like the split screen feet walking across the street. You know, that was simple enough that it didn't have to evolve or anything. So it really depends. But as far as actors go, again, on a TV show, I might ask the production, like, hey, could I send a few emails? Can you give me some actors' emails to be like, just to introduce myself and tell them, you know, if you need anything, I'm here if you want to talk before production. But usually on a TV show, unless there's something really special to talk about, you know, I could, you only meet the actors and talk to them the first day you're on set. Whereas my movies, I you know, got way closer to my actresses, Midori and Jolene, and like we had FaceTime calls, and then we had, you know, meals before. So it really, all that stuff depends on the project.
Hey movie buffs, it's Deji. When the mics are off, we spill the beans on the Lot1 Podcast after show, only on Patreon. So, if you like getting early access to episodes, sipping tea, hearing untold stories of behind-the-scenes magic, connecting with filmmakers, and more, hit us up on Patreon at patreon.com/Lot1 Podcast, and we'll be sipping tea together. How does it differ doing like your personal either short films or features and TV, like from the perspective of a director?
Doing TV, you are a guest in someone else's home, and you are in creative, you're servicing the show and the story by coming in and adding things, or evolving things, or hopefully they hired you because they like your style and like your instincts, and you can use that as an asset to go further. But really, as a TV director, you're there to really try to understand the showrunner's vision and hopes and dreams, and then use your skills to actuate that, make that into a reality on footage. Whereas a movie, I mean, you are essentially what a showrunner is on TV. Is you are for a movie. Like, you are kind of the creative. You are the creative head. And if an actor has questions or like about lines and things, I'm there to answer that. Whereas on a TV show, if an actor has questions about the script, hopefully I've been able to learn enough from the showrunner to answer the questions. But there's definitely times when I might defer to the showrunner or get them in the conversation, because I'm not actually able to sign off on every creative choice, right? Whereas in the film, it's like there are creative producers obviously that are collaborators in making certain choices, but as far as like setting the style and setting the tone and making those judgment calls, a director of a feature, it's much more your baby. I guess the closest thing to directing a feature in television is directing the pilot, right? The pilot is the first episode of the TV show. You are there to really, set the tone and set the look and set everything. So, but otherwise you are a guest if you do anything outside of the pilot.
So I think I already know the answer, but which one do you prefer?
Well, I've never, gotten to direct a pilot before, so that's one that's not in the repertoire yet. But I mean, I like them both, honestly, for very different reasons. Like, the challenge of understanding someone else's creative world and executing that can be really fun. It can also be, an added layer of emotional intensity of like, oh, I want to do such a good job for them, whereas like, I don't mind letting myself down, but I don't want to let, an employer down, like a creative employer, right? So there is an added layer of kind of like emotional intensity that I've definitely had to work through and like find ways to be comfortable with, because I very much am a people pleaser. So when you give me a boss, I really want to please them. So I need to balance that instinct with my own creative, like what they hired me for, which is also to be a leader, right?
Yeah.
So I guess to say, I mean, if I were to have I think because of that anxiety that can come from trying to make somebody else's vision come true, features are preferable, because again, like, I don't have somebody else I could let down creatively. So that's nice. But as far as like actually directing, like, you might try again all kinds of new things that you wouldn't necessarily do in your own movies in somebody else's show. And you might also play in these different worlds that you may never build for your own. That's not necessarily your specific choices. So they both come with different benefits and hardships.
I guess how do you navigate, so when you're on a series and you didn't start it, how do you navigate and maintain like the integrity and the tone that you're like of that show? How do you navigate that?
Yeah, it depends. I think it's hardest when it's like a first season show. I think when there's multiple seasons of the show, you kind of get it, right? You watch it and you're like, this is the tone of acting. These are the kind of camera angles that they use. This procedural shows versus single camera prestige shows. Like, you just kind of start to understand what's you kind of, by watching, you're able to really discern that. But yeah, season 1 show, you just have to ask a lot of questions, and hopefully you're able to see episodes that have been done by other directors that came before you. You're watching the dailies and kind of seeing the kind of camera work that they're choosing to do. But really, I mean, again, TV directing, you really want to have a really good set of just you want to be able to be very inquisitive and really smart with your questions, and don't be afraid to ask questions, and because that's your best way, because yeah, unless a show's been on the air for a long time, if you're a season 1 show in the first few episodes, I think some of the showrunners are still trying to find the show,
Yeah.
it's not necessarily set for them either, so just a collaborator in that process of nailing it down.
So how influential is the supervising director from the pilot? Like, are they there with you? Do you have conversations with them prior to?
So I think the pilot directors are rarely continue to be a presence on the show, to my knowledge, but there is another role called producing director, and they're not necessarily the pilot director. They do direct on the show, but they're a director and they are an EP. So they're there for a much longer term than the pilot director might be. The pilot director might be a fancy feature guy or girl. They might direct it and then just fly off and have no other responsibility to the show.
Yeah.
Whereas a producing director, whether they're a pilot director or not, they do continue to stay on the show and make sure that there's consistency to the directing. But then how involved a producing director is, again, I think depends on the show and depends on the producing director, whether they're there for every episode or not. I'm not sure. And I think they might be more present if a guest director is less experienced or has been there less. I think, again, that their presence and role evolves with every show.
Kind of going back to your movie Unseen. How did that sort of come about? Like, how did that happen? Was it did you get brought on, or were you there with the people who wrote it?
Yeah, so with Unseen, so this is just another proof in the pudding that you put seeds in the ground and they may flourish years down the road, right? So I guess it wasn't years with this one. So, well, or maybe it was. So I had done, the Sam Raimi Quibi anthology, and that was kind of my first horror thing that I did, right? So that work sample got me into, horror spaces, and I think Blumhouse was aware of me, and my reps had submitted me for different Blumhouse meetings and stuff like that. So I think I was just kind of on their radar for a little bit, but not really. And then eventually, though, my manager submitted me for, it wasn't actually Unseen. It was another script that they had that they were making. So Unseen is a streaming film, and it was made is one of, I think, 6 or 7 films that they that Blumhouse made specifically for Epix, which has now become MGM. So it's almost like they had a client, right? The client was like, "Hey, Blumhouse, we want you to make 6 original horror thriller films for us. We have this big budget for it. So you allocate, which movies get how much amount, and just make us this many movies so that they can have something to put on their platform." So I actually pitched for a different script that wasn't Unseen, and I got that. I booked that project. I did like a big deck, right? Like I had like a 40-page deck with all these images, and I had a whole pitch about why I'm right for the role, and what I would do with it. I explained the cinematography, the story approach, the production design. I did a whole breakdown, and I really went for it. And so then I booked it. But then like a month after I booked it, we weren't like actually getting any paperwork. So we're like, what's going on? And it turned out that the clients kind of got they decided to pull the particular script that I had booked. They topically they decided it's just not something they want to deal with. It was actually about Asian American women who are fetishized and like them fighting back. But they got cold feet about that topic. So we were very upset. I really liked that movie. I still wish it was we could get it made. But so that job went away, and it was a really shitty moment because I had turned down 2 different TV shows to take that project. I had gotten offers from a broadcast show and a Netflix show, and I had to turn both of them down
man.
to do the movie. And so I lost like 3 jobs in one day, you know?
Damn.
So that happens. But the Blumhouse people were like, we're so sorry. You know, this wasn't our choice. We really love the script. So, yeah, they were like, we'll keep you in mind for other scripts. So they sent me, so Unseen was one of those other projects that they had. They were like, you
Yeah.
might be right for this one. What did you think? So yeah, then I pitched on that one. But they already kind of knew my style and who I was from the other
Yeah.
deck. So that second pitch wasn't as intense as far as like the visuals that I showed off. But yeah, so that's how it came about. Is like other projects went
That's
away.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is really interesting. I obviously know that happens, you know, but it's like, especially if you've already accepted it and then like you're turning down things and then like it just
I mean, friends of mine have been on, you know, or you can be on a set scouting and they cancel the movie. You know, you can have shot it and you're editing and then cancel the movie. You can have finished editing and they can the movie. Like it's never real till it's real.
Until it's out. Yeah.
Until it's in theaters and it's
even then they can
playing.
pull it off the streaming. Yeah.
You can go away anytime.
Yeah. Wow. So
I have a question, DG. In terms of like, I've always been curious about this, and I know it's important, but let's focus maybe on features or whatever, but how important is the relationship with you and your producer? Like if you had a project or an idea that you are going to run with and it's your story and you want to find funding for it or whatever, like how important is it to find like the producer that you want? Or is that more of like more open book? Do you get what I'm saying? Like, are you picky? Are you not picky?
I think you definitely should be, you know, it's like casting any role, right? Like you want the right person for the job. Like you'd want the right cinematographer, like you like anybody else. Sure. But as far as my particular approach has been, like I don't think I've been like a super picky, like I need to interview them 5 times and talk to their references. And I mean, the reality is that I've been assigned producers most of the projects I've done, right? So Unseen, you know, a few of the projects that I'm working on now, like it's more project based than producer based. So, and without having had the opportunity to vet anybody, I've had perfectly positive experiences. So I think it's definitely different, right? If you have a script and you wrote it and it's like, well, I would like to get it made, I want to find the right person. But yeah, so I think, yes, it's really important. I haven't been that super picky person because I haven't really been in that opportunity, and I've had plenty of good experiences.
If you were in that opportunity, would you be picky? I guess that's what I'm trying to poke at.
You know, it's interesting because I'm actually attached to a lot of projects, right? Like as a director, you have a lot of attachments, right? So,
what do you mean by that? Attachments?
It means that, you know, there's things called ODAs, open directing assignments, and those could be projects that are just a script that have no money, or they have money and they're looking for a director, right? So my manager, my agents might come to me with an ODA being like, hey, Yoko, this is a script. People, you know, producers think you might be right for it. We think you might be right for it. Take a read and tell us what you think. So if I don't like it, then it's like, it's not for me, pass. If I like it, then I might have a meeting for it, right? So I've had a lot of projects like that where it's more project based, where I'm like, oh my God, I love this script, right? I love this script. I get along with the producer when I'm talking about it, and we seem to have a similar vision for it. So I guess in those moments, I haven't been picky about the producer because I'm like, I love the project and they seem great, but I'm not really interviewing the producer worried that they might be wrong for it. I'm just like, I love this project, you know? But okay, but let's say if, and I definitely have projects that like I'm writing that I would want to find people for, but it's funny, I haven't gotten to that place yet where I'm like shopping for a producer
Right.
and I'm like interviewing a bunch to see if they're right for me. It's more been like producers come to me and like, hey, do you have anything cool? And I'm like, here, yeah, I've got this script. And they're like, oh, cool, let's try to make it. And I'm like, okay, great. So yeah, I guess I'm not picky.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think after a while, like, doing like more and more projects, and you're getting attached to more and more things, and you have like your pick, then that's when you really can be picky, right? Like you can be, when you've got like multiple projects that are like, a lot of people are in or after, they can be more discerning, right? Or
yeah, and it's like it's tricky. It's so interesting. Like there's so many different kinds of producers.
Yeah.
Producers can be people who never leave the office and never come to set because they're development executives, but they're still producers. But those are the people who find you first. And then they might, and then, they get a production company to do it. And then they have line producers, and then they might hire an on-set producer. Like, so I think the pickiest you want to be is that day-to-day on the ground with you on set producer, right? But typically they might be there before you are, and they choose you. So it's almost like this hard thing. And by the time I become like, a hot shot director with lots of power and choice, I probably may have already worked with a ton of producers that I like, and just work with one of them because I've done it. But I met them without, you know what I mean? Like I didn't choose them, but I already have those relationships. And if they're good, I'll just keep them going. So I guess that's like an era of my career that I don't know about yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the key word.
So I do want to switch a little bit gears to like a lot of the initiatives that you have been a part of, like the Reframe program. Do you mind just kind of like going through like some of the things that you're involved in?
Yeah. So, ever since I graduated film school, both CalArts and AFI, like I've just gotten to a habit of applying to everything, just like collecting rejections. And I just keep applying and applying. And, it gets expensive, but it's just like a part of it's like going to the dentist. You just do it. And, for years I didn't get into anything. Right. So like, Sundance is one where I've gotten so close, but I've never gotten into anything. Like, I guess Reframe, it technically is Sundance, but as far as a festival goes, I've never gotten in. Right. But still, I just kept applying to everything. And the doors that started to open up for me was more in the TV space, right? So I was doing independent film. I was applying to both independent film and also TV programs, but TV started to actually let me in their programs. So I first got into the Fox one. I've done Ryan Murphy. I did the Warner Brothers, and so I've done several now. But and now I'm in the Apple program, which is a mid-career program for directors. And I'm also in the Women in Film and Sundance Reframe Rise program, which is also for mid-career directors and DPs. And so, again, that's the first program I got into was 2017 with Fox. And so it's been a long road, years and years of different programs. And but specifically, especially for television, they've been really important to getting me here. The show that finally gave me a shot and gave me my first episode is called Good Trouble. And they weren't a part of an official studio directing program, but the showrunners of that show was running their own because they just really wanted to bring new people into the fold. So they were asking agents and managers if there were any up and coming directors that were interested in television that would want to shadow the show. So I think having shadowed already, I was in a good position to also be able to shadow with them, and they finally gave me my episode. So I know that but that was 2020, right? So I was like shadowing and doing programs from like 2017 to 2020, years before I actually booked an episode. And then I'm still doing programs. I'm actually in Vancouver right now shadowing a director.
Wow. That's
yes.
Fun.
So
really
Yeah, so even though I have, done about 5 episodes of TV and a feature myself, this is again mid-career program, so
Yeah.
I'm, shadowing a director who's who's a veteran who's done many shows and really big shows. So there's still always more to learn, and there's always
Yeah.
different tiers. You're still trying to like get your foot in. So it continues to this day.
So explain
That's
what you
awesome.
mean by program for those who
Yeah.
may not understand what.
Yeah, so when I say program, it can mean multitudes of things. If it's an independent film program, it could be Sundance Institute, where you apply to be, one of 15 scripts and filmmakers that are chosen to go up to Sundance to do like a 1 week lab. They call them labs, where you are a chosen fellow, a lab fellow, where they announce to the world you have been chosen as like one of these 15 specials projects, and you get mentored, and you go up into the Utah hills to you talk to a lot of Sundance alumni, and you might shoot a scene of your script to try to make screenwriting lab you don't shoot, but directing lab you do. So a lot of really amazing people have been through that, like Quentin Tarantino, I think Sundance labbed, Reservoir Dogs, just it's like very legendary program. So that's like the most famous one in the independent film world. But there are a lot of different programs for screenwriters and directors and even cinematographers, and it runs the gamut. Specifically TV, the TV programs I'm talking about are diversity programs. So it means that a TV studio, a network, a platform is trying very hard to bring in more diverse directors into the working fold of their spaces. And so they create within their actual company. Like Fox had a program where they had an employee whose job it was to create a essentially mentorship and shadowing program for diverse directors. So as a diverse director, you apply with your reel and your resume, and probably answering a few questions, and interview with them, and they pick a few of you to do shadowing. When I was doing it, that was kind of it. There was no guarantee of getting a job out of that. But actually now the DGA has made it so most programs have to guarantee an episode to somebody who they have shadowed. Now, interesting enough, Apple and Amazon are two places that got an exemption from guaranteeing. Don't know why. Somebody else can answer that question. But yeah, so that's, in a nutshell, programs are places where up and coming filmmakers, directors can get in for mentorship, shadowing jobs, different things.
Cool. Christopher here, co-host of the Lot1 Podcast. Are you eager for real industry insights? Patreon's where it's at with the Lot1 Podcast After Show, untold stories, behind the scenes drama. Let's dive in. Subscribe at patreon.com/the Lot1 Podcast.
How much do you feel like your heritage and you being a female influences like the creative that you want to put out and the stories you want to tell?
I think for me specifically, I'm very much like a girl's girl, and I love pop culture, and I love fashion and makeup and colors, and like I love all the flashy parts of being a woman. But I also love the dark and the up and all the things that are underneath the glamour.
Yeah.
So I think that's where I find myself, is again like the intersection of grit and glamour. So the glamour aspects, like I think my full embrace of the glamorous aspects of femininity is absolutely a crucial part of that. And for me, talking about the kind of topics that I want to talk about is very, very much like it affects all genders, but again, body image issues and gender issues and sexuality, like I think all of that comes from through my perspective as a woman, so it can't help but be and I love to put unlikely heroes on screen whenever I can, and those tend to be perhaps the kind of women that we wouldn't usually see as heroes of a movie. So but yeah, and then like it is very important to me. as far as Asian American representation, people of color representation. Again, it all goes under the umbrella of I want to see people who haven't been able to be heroes before or
Yeah.
villains, or just and in the spotlight.
Right.
Villain, hero, neutral, like just in the spotlight as protagonists. And
Hmm.
so that could mean their ethnic background, that could mean their sociological background. Like it can run the gamut of what kind of diversity. But for me, it's just like it's just more, to me it's like I just want to see something interesting and
Yeah.
new.
Yeah.
And a lot of times the tool to do that can be, what kind of hero are you actually spotlighting, and have we
Hmm.
not seen that before?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
That's great.
That's really cool.
I d- do you feel like that perspective? I've seen a couple of your shorts. Um, is that something that if you're doing that a lot, is that what like a lot of the studios are like looking for, especially when they have like these diversity, like inclusion type of programs that they're trying to have more uh, directors to apply to? Is that what they're looking for? Is like heroes that are not necessarily seen on screen?
I think that's the way I like to put it. But
Yeah.
yeah, if I was a diversity program looking at applications,
Hmm.
I don't necessarily think that directors create all of their creations have to be like literally the
Hmm.
the race they are, or the sexual orientation that they are. Like, obviously, if that's what's true to them and that's what they want to bring to screen, and they're more literally putting themselves, the stories that are like their lived experience onto screen, like,
Yeah.
I don't think that ever hurts. I think that's that's obviously an easy way to show like this is a very important thing to me. But I don't think you'd actually be ruled out by having different people who are not of your own specific backgrounds as your leaders, or as your heroes, or as your the people in your stories. I think it's about who you are and what skills you have and what you aspire to and what potential you already have.
Mm.
And Yeah, it's a tricky thing, these diversity programs. They definitely have, try to keep being better, and they keep evolving. I think in the early days, of applying to them, there were sometimes like a lot of questions we'd get asked that I think now people have stopped asking. Whereas, why is your perspective important for the world? And it's like, and that kind of question is a little like, I mean, what are you trying to make me say mine is more important than another person of colors? Like, are you trying to make
Hmm.
me say that, like, why mine is special? Like, it's I'm
Yeah.
a director. Like, don't make don't it's it's a similar thing with college applications, right? Like, what, don't make me show off, or to a white gaze, right, that I need my stories told because I'm a special, and I'm like, it just, so
It's like you're trying to prove it.
yeah, trying to prove that you're worthy, like your
Right.
diverse perspective is somehow worthy compared to other people. And so I think people have, so it started off that way, and I think people caught
Yeah.
on that was a little bit problematic to keep asking directors of colors to prove themselves and
Yeah.
validate their existence as a storyteller.
Right.
So now I think I've seen more application. I mean, I only applied to the mid-career ones, but I at this point, but I think that it's more questions about you as a storyteller, and
Hmm.
more about the craft than specifically your specific background. So that
Yeah.
you don't have to perform your diversity for whoever's asking.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I we're gonna keep talking in the after show, but I wanted to. We're running out of time for this section. Um, Chris does have a question that he likes to ask at the end of
Sure.
our
If you
interviews.
had one piece of advice, just a real quick one sentence, one piece of advice to give anyone who's listening, who wants to be a director, what would be that one piece of advice you'd give them?
Always be making a new movie. um I again, like I said earlier, I made so many bad movies before I made one that resembled okay. Maybe other people are geniuses and they're making good movies on their first turn, but for me, the advice I give is like just keep churning them out. Again, I made so many short films before I ever made a good short film, and then I made more short films before I ever made a feature film, and I'm sure there's just and then I guess so. Here's a little anecdote, right? Like after film school, I think the best decision I made for myself was I took a little bit of what was left of my student loans, and I bought myself a camera and 2 lavalier mics, so that I can always be making something, right? And
Right.
even if I
Yeah.
had no money after AFI, I had no money, right? I still had the equipment. And even though I didn't have money to make a narrative film, I made a bunch of documentaries. So I was like, I'm still gonna make something. I'm still gonna direct something. I'm still gonna tell stories no matter what. And my production is not gonna stop just because I don't have any money.
Yeah.
So having the camera and having some lavs, that was just like the best investment that I made. So that even as I was struggling financially after grad school, I was able to create, I made a short documentary series called Facets, and it was just a series of docs about fascinating women who carve their own, journeys in their lives, unique journeys, paths for themselves. And I just looked for cool women that I thought was fascinating, like a plus size erotic video performer. I had a Star Wars burlesque creator. I had a professional mermaid. Like I just found people that I thought were dope and made like 3-minute docs about them, right? But even with a no budget doc, I made sure to maintain my style, the topics that fascinated me. I was still able to practice my voice, even if it wasn't a scripted project that required more money. So, yeah, just follow your bliss and keep making stuff, whether you're getting paid to do it or not, whether you have money to do it or not. You could do it with your phone with a bunch of glitter and paper. Like you just keep making stuff, because practice is key, because this craft takes years to really get good at.
Yeah.
Just do it.
Just do it.
So we have some listener mail, some questions from our listeners. With your experience working as a TV director, what type of advice would you give? What type of advice would you give somebody who, 1, wants to direct TV, 2, has booked their first directing gig, and what they can kind of expect?
If you want to direct TV, you want to watch a lot of TV and study the kind of TV you want to do, right? I think that just purely just the beginning is like you want to be a student of the form. I think, I had a phase where I was like, I'm going to do comedy, which is not me anymore. But I did have a phase where I like watched, 30 Rock and like actually broke down jokes, what they were saying and when the jokes landed. And I was just trying to study the form. But, whether it's that or you want to be a director who does something like Succession, like just watch one scene that you love and break it down and be like, how many angles did they use? What kind of blocking did they do? So just study the stuff that you hope to be making someday, I guess would be a start. And then as far as if you've booked your first directing job, what should you expect? I think that completely, how I would answer that depends on what that job is. But if it's your first, let's say you book your first TV directing job, what to expect is, again, a lot of physical intensity, again, from my experience. What to expect is, if I could say it in one word, it's intensity. Like expect intensity, brace for it, and embrace it, just lean into it. Use the adrenaline, because again, the kind of show that might give you your first chance for your first episode might not be the most well-budgeted project, so you're gonna be hustling, you're gonna be running against the clock, you're gonna be like, oh my god, like, oh, are we gonna get this, we're gonna get, like, my first episode, like, I don't know why it was so crazy, but like it was just a crazy schedule. It was a crazy schedule, and we just always felt like we were running behind. But and honestly, I thought it was my fault or something. And I was like, oh my god, I'm so bad at this. But then later, I talked to people, and they're like, no, it wasn't, like, you did a great job. Like, it was just like
Nice.
so many locations, and it was just a crazy episode. And so
Yeah.
specifically, if it's your first episode of TV, like, yeah, just expect kind of madness, actually. Yeah.
Okay, then our second question is, can you walk us through the casting process for the movie Unseen, and were the actors attached already?
So the casting process for Unseen, when I got the script, the characters did not have a specific ethnicity. They were the kind of they had their jobs, right, and they
Mm-hmm.
had this potential budding friendship. But what I specifically, actually, with the character of Emily, was like, she was already an ER doctor, and I was like, you know what, I want to provide that character with a specificity of like honoring Asian American like healthcare workers, because there's a huge amount of them. I think originally I was like, I love this person to be Cambodian specifically, or
Mm-hmm.
Vietnamese, like Southeast Asian. And that's what I pitched right before we did it on the auditions or something. But before I even got the job, I was like, Emily specifically, I'd love to really give her that background, because it would add to that a real subculture of Asian American healthcare
Yeah.
workers.
Yeah.
Whereas the character Sam, that was eventually played by Jolene, she was pretty different too. I think she was younger, and she was like a architecture school dropout. Like, it was a really different kind of character
Yeah.
background. And I was like, I think I'm gonna. So yeah, so before we even got to casting, I was starting to tweak who I wanted, the kind of people these were from the original script. And
Mm.
okay, so with specifically with Sam, I had seen White Lotus, and I was like, that's her. That's my Sam. Like, I was like, so it was Jolene Purdy in the season 1 of White Lotus, and she's so funny and so amazing. But I was like,
Mm.
I need her. I want her. She was actually my, like she was my goal. Like, she was my like role model for the role. And the
Mm-hmm.
miracle was that my casting director was good friends with her manager, and was like,
Wow.
I think we can get her. And so Jolene
That's
originally, like,
awesome.
she's a comedy girl, and she never really thought like she'd want to do horror. Like, she thought it'd be kind of fun to do something physical like that, but I think she was thinking like comedy horror.
Yeah.
And somehow she ended up in this one. But she was like on the plane or something, and like on her way back from a shooting something, and she was so tired to do the callback. It wasn't quite her jam, but then we met on the callback, and like we got along really well, and she had fun with the callback. So then she was like, okay, I think I like this. I like Yoko. I'm into this. So she was like somebody that, again, was like a fantastic miracle that I got the person, literally the person that I wanted for the
Yeah.
role. And for Emily, specifically, we were like, yeah, I'd love to see Asian American actresses. So we did the usual roundups of casting and callbacks.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and at that point, it was about matching the two, right? And feeling like if they had the right contrast between the two characters, and they
Mm.
could feel like they could be friends. So yeah, Midori just brought this really raw intensity to her audition and callback. Like, she was already in character before we even started. So like, she didn't even really say hello. Like, I was kind of scared of her, because she was just like, all the lights were off in her like room, and she was just like already like lost in the woods in her head. So I was like, oh
Yeah.
god. But I loved that. And she just, again,
Yeah.
in such an interesting way, her own way, very method like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that was kind of the process. And I feel like I got really lucky with them. And yeah, and actually, kind of talking to my background as being a Japanese director, like, I never thought I would end up with two Japanese women as my leads. I just really didn't imagine that as something I could even want or ask for, let alone would just happen. But so yeah, I didn't know Jolene was Japanese actually until I looked her up online, and then Midori again just like happened to be right for the role, and she had two. It was a really strange, wonderful miracle, like that I never thought could happen. Couldn't have even planned for. So
that's awesome. I will say Jolene did bring some humor to the role, like just naturally. Sure. I mean, it wasn't really like a comedic role, but like she brought that just like in the way that she kind of like moved around. It was kind of cool. And I mean, there was definitely some comedic aspects, especially with the Slurpee machine that breaks down and she having to, but
and her comedy chops, just like a look she could give, right? A reaction she could give can be funny because she just has that skill, the comedy skill. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, well, thanks so much for being on the show. This has come to the end. We can keep talking for I feel like a long time.
Oh yeah.
But I really appreciate you coming on and just having this chat with us. It was really awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
For sure. Thank you for having me. It was fun. Chatting.
Yeah, and hopefully we can do it again sometime soon when the next movie comes out. That'd be cool.
For sure. That would be fantastic.
Speaking of that, is there anything that you want, like, your socials, like where can people find you?
Yeah, I'm mostly posting on stories on my Instagram. That's mostly where I live. Nice. So that's at 4Yoko. If you're a millennial, you might know the reference to a infamous college beverage that we once somehow drank.
Yeah, that was.
But if you are perhaps not a millennial, you're probably more on TikTok, where I am at Director Yoko, and I make content about filmmaking and trying to give nuggets to the youth about, what this industry is like.
Awesome. Yeah, well, you've given a lot of nuggets to the youth now, so that's pretty awesome. And if anybody wants to see Unseen or any of your other shorts, where can they go?
Unseen is on Amazon Prime and I believe MGM Plus. I don't know who owns that platform. It is there, I believe. And I think on Paramount as well. I think it's all over the place, but I know that it's on Amazon Prime for sure.
Yeah.
And my shorts are, I guess, on my website. YokoOkumura.com is where my short docs and short narratives still are.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.
Cool. Thanks.
Bye. All right, that's a wrap for today's episode of the Lot1 Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed the episode, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts, and leave a review and share it with your horses, your best friends, even your teacher. Your teacher needs to hear the show. If you do that, it helps us be found by other people. If you're not a part of our exclusive Patreon community yet, head on over to patreon.com/the Lot1 Podcast. That is the Lot, L-O-T, and the number 1 podcast for early access, bonus content like the after show, and more. Also, I want to give a quick shout out to our incredible Patreon supporters. Your backing keeps the Lot1 Podcast lights on. Connect with us on Instagram and TikTok. What are you doing not being connected to us? Okay? It is at the Lot1 Podcast for behind the scenes content and updates. That's what you'll get there. We're also now accepting listener mail. So if you got any questions for our guests, drop us a line or a DM. Also, if you are interested in finding out more about Lot1 Productions and all we got going on over there, check us out at lot1productions.com. Special thanks to Tourist Hat Coffee Company for sponsoring this week's episode. Head on over to touristhatcoffeecompany.com to redeem your exclusive buy 2 get 1 free deal with the promo code LOT1BOGO. That's LOT, number 1, BOGO at checkout. Terms and conditions may apply. Again, that's Lot1 BOGO at checkout. Until next time, keep those creative fires burning. Dream big, and remember, the filmmaking journey is a ride worth taking. See you next week. Bye.